I'm so sorry, this is such a mess, but I am so sick of filming this intro because this is my 38th time trying to film it because I've realised that I have a horrible personality. Hello and welcome back to our channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is Jessie and my sister and I run this channel and we post videos every Sunday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. about fashion. So if that is something that interests you, make sure you subscribe and also like this video because that would be pretty cool. Anyway, for today's video, I initially wanted to do a thrift flip, but obviously with coronavirus, I didn't know how safe it would be to go to a thrift store, especially because I live in Texas and our coronavirus cases just keep going up. Also, I've been reading a lot about the debate of thrifting as a trend because a lot of people are saying that it's good because thrift stores need the business and also it prevents the clothes from going into the landfills and it also diverts attention from the fast fashion industry, but at the same time it's disproportionately affecting low-income communities because prices are being driven up and also the supply is going down for basic items that they need like coats or jeans or stuff. So I don't really know what to do in terms of thrifting. I don't know what's like the right thing to do. So today I decided to do a DIY video instead. So I am going to be DIYing the internet's favorite sustainable brand that very few people can actually afford. Reformation. Of course. I spent a lot of time on the Reformation website because obviously their pieces are beautiful, but who has $200 for a singular top? Certainly not me. So I'm gonna try to recreate these pieces with fabric that I found from the remnants section of Joann's. And if you don't know what remnants are, they're basically like the end of a roll of fabric. It's like the scraps of fabric basically. And I usually prefer to get the remnants because they're not only cheaper, but also they'll probably throw them out if no one buys them. So also, before we start, I should mention that I am not an expert at sewing whatsoever. I have very limited skills. Anything that I know, I learned from the internet or my mom or my grandma or I taught myself. So I'll just insert pictures here of things that I've done in the past. They look fine from far away, but then you look up close and you're like, a little sketch. Honestly, with the limited skills that I have, I did a pretty okay job, struggled a lot. Pretty sure I broke my back in the process because I was not sitting in the correct position while sewing, but that's my fault. I'm gonna learn from that. And yeah, I basically rambled way too much, so here's the video. So I'm not really a person that focuses on precision when I'm sewing, which for obvious reasons is stupid, but I tried my best this time to actually have a method to what I'm doing. So this top is actually what inspired this video. I saw a picture of it on Pinterest a really long time ago and I immediately wanted to recreate it, and then I found this beautiful silky lilac fabric from Joann's and I just knew it was too perfect. So to make the top, I started out by measuring myself pretty roughly because when you cinch in fabric it doesn't really have to be exact. And the measurements that I ended up going with were 22 by 17, so I folded my fabric in half and cut 2 identical pieces out of that size for the front and backs of my top. The next thing I did was measure where I'd put the elastics on the top, but the measurements don't really matter because I didn't actually end up using them. Then I started to measure out the elastics for the top by fitting them around the sections of my body that they would lay on. Again, did not get concrete measurements, but it ended up working out alright. The next thing I did was sew the top hem, and the last time I made a top like this, I sewed the elastic just straight on top like the other elastic layers, but it kind of folded over so that you could see the elastic. So this time I went with a channel method where I sewed a larger hem at the top of the blouse and then I fed the elastic through it to gather it together. So here I'm creating about an inch of a seam at the top of the blouse, and then I went ahead and just started sewing the elastic layers. This is honestly the hardest part of making a blouse like this, having to pull the elastic while you sew while also keeping the needle's path a straight line. So I used 3 pins to hold it in place just to sort of help with that, and it ends up gathering the fabric and just cinching it all in to get the effect that you want. So I went ahead and did that 3 times for all the elastic layers, and then I fed the elastic through the channel that I made at the top of the blouse, and I sewed the ends down so that they would stay. I realized that the bottom hem I had measured was a lot longer than I wanted it to be, so I ended up cutting off some fabric fabric before doing the final hem. And just like that, I finished the first half of my top. And it actually ended up looking a lot better than I thought it was. I was super excited about that. I basically repeated all of those steps on the second half. So making the channel for the elastic at the top, sewing the 3 elastic layers, etc. I remeasured where these elastic layers would go by putting the 2 halves right sides together and basically marking where the elastics on the finished half were on the unfinished half so that the elastics would line up when I sewed them together, if that makes sense. So now that I have 2 matching halves, I just pinned them right sides together and then sewed down the sides to secure them. I used a zigzag stitch first and then I went over it with a straight stitch. I don't really know why, but it just felt like something an actual seamstress would do. Then I tried on the top just to see how it would fit, and honestly, I was shocked at how good it looked considering that I had made it. I was really proud of myself. So the last thing that I had to do was the straps, and they were probably the worst part of this. They were supposed to be so skinny and it was just so frustrating. So I just decided to make them a little bit thicker than what they were supposed to be. I also chose not to do the tied detail because I actually prefer just regular straps. So I cut a long piece that was the full length of the fabric, about 1 inch or 2, and then I cut it in half for the 2 straps. I folded these strips right sides together and then sewed down with a straight stitch, and then I had to pull it inside out. So to do that, I used a needle and thread, but I used the non-pointy side of the needle to feed it through so it wouldn't keep poking through the fabric. I'll put a link in the description box below for the YouTube video that I watched that taught me how to do this. This took an unnecessarily long amount of time, and I'm pretty sure I broke my back from being hunched over for an hour, but they ended up looking really good. So then I just measured and sewed them on, and finally I was done with the top. I really love how this turned out. Like, it's something that I would 100% buy if I saw it in a store. The lilac color is just so lovely, and being this satiny fabric, it just looks so clean and so much more expensive. I can see myself wearing this in all seasons by layering it with different items on top and underneath, and yeah, a success, I'd say. For this next top, I'm going to recreate this completely sheared top with ruffled sleeves, but I'm using this light blue fabric that's kind of thick and sturdy, and it has a bit of a stretch to it, so it's pretty different from the sleek black look of the original. Conceptually, this one was the easiest, but the execution was absolutely excruciating. I literally never want to shear fabric ever again in my life. Maybe there's an easier way to do it than what I did, I don't know, but the shearing alone literally took more than half a season of New Girl to finish. So basically, to make the top, I cut a long piece from the blue fabric instead of 2 halves like the last top because, as we all know, I'm the laziest person alive and I didn't want to have to do 2 separate halves this time. So this meant that I basically ended up with only 1 seam. This method was a lot easier because I didn't have to go through the mess of lining up the elastics on the 2 halves like I did in the last one, and it also would have been a lot worse on this top because there's way more elastics on this one. But it also sucked because I had to sew the elastics for a longer length, and you'll see at the end that this made my shearing job super messy because I just could not sew in a straight line to save my life. It was so hard for me. So there's just a bunch of pockets where I screwed up and it's really obvious. Basically, I lost a few years of my life and broke my entire back after hours of shearing, but afterwards I just folded the fabric in half, right sides together, and sewed down the seam. To make the sleeves, I basically cut out 2 long curved pieces, and then I folded the straight edge up to create a channel so that I could feed an elastic through it, and then I just sewed down the edges of the elastic. Because I didn't measure again, the sleeves were a little bit too short, so I added a strap to the back so that it would fit, and then I basically just sewed it down, and that was it. Honestly, when I was in the process of making it, I thought it was going to be so much worse, but I actually like it, the sleeves especially. I think the sleeves are so cute, and the top hem, which is supposed to be a straight line, sort of curves, which I actually really like. I think it gives a more playful effect to the top. Obviously, this is quite different from the original Reformation piece, but I still like it and I know that I'm going to be able to wear it a lot. I thought this last piece was going to be the most difficult one to make because it's supposed to be a lot more tailored and form-fitting, and I couldn't really guesstimate like I did with the other ones that used elastic. But this one I actually finished in less than 2 hours, and I think it's my favorite top that I made. I used this really pretty fabric that's actually supposed to be used for furniture, so I'm thinking like a nice upholstery moment or something. But obviously I am using it for clothing instead. It's a thicker material, which I'm grateful for because I didn't want to have to add a lining to it. LOL, surprise, I'm taking the easy way out again. I honestly had no idea what I was doing or what I was measuring because I'd never made a top like this before, so I was just improvising everything. In my head, the shape of this was just a little bit more nuanced than 2 rectangles sewn together and some straps slapped on top. Again, the measurements I took don't matter because, of course, I did not use them. A recurring theme in this video. I'm so sorry. If it wasn't obvious before, you should know that you should not take this video as a tutorial. I don't actually know what I'm doing. Basically, I just hemmed the top and bottom of the first piece, and then I afterwards decided to round off the top part so it would slope down underneath my armpit. And then I laid the front and back pieces on the ground and lined them up so I could properly hem the back piece so that it would blend seamlessly with the front piece. Then I just sewed down the hem and sewed the front and back pieces together. After that, I just cut straight down the middle so that I could add a zipper, and then I sewed that zipper down. Then I tried on the top and started to measure where I would put darts in so that the top would be more form-fitting. And honestly, I had no idea what I was doing during this part, but I improvised, obviously, as much as I could. So I marked off where the darts would go, and then I just sewed them down, and it didn't end up perfectly, but it looks fine. For the straps, I basically just cut 2 strips that were like 2 inches wide, and I folded them right sides together and sewed them down, and then I just used a safety pin to pull the right side out. Now, this is a place where I definitely should have used an iron to flatten the straps down and make it a little bit neater, but I just wanted to be done so badly that I just sewed the straps down and finished the top. Honestly, I really love this top. Like I said, I think it's my favorite. I just think it's so easy to wear. It can be dressed up and dressed down really easily, and yeah, I just really love it. So that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Obviously, these tops are nowhere near exact replicas to the Reformation ones because I'm really lazy and took a lot of shortcuts and did the best that I personally could, which is not great. But I hope this inspired you guys to make your own tops in the name of sustainability. But if not, that's cool too. I hope it was entertaining nonetheless. And yeah, like, subscribe, do all the things if you want to, and we will see you in our next video on Sunday. Bye!